Imagine stepping outside your door right now. The air is thick, the streets are slick with mud and waste, and there's an invisible, completely misunderstood killer just slowly suffocating your entire world. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're skipping the dry dates and numbers. Instead, we're going to try to understand what it actually felt like, what it sounded like, and yes, what it smelled like to live through the absolute deadliest pandemic in human history, the Black Death.
To truly wrap our heads around this nightmare, we really need to look at the psychological toll first. The Italian writer Giovanni Boccaccio lived through this horror, and he penned a chilling observation. He noted that the creeping dread of the plague didn't just break people's bodies, it literally shattered human bonds. The terror was so absolute, so overwhelming, that healthy people abandoned their own sick families. They just left them to die alone behind closed doors. Because, in their minds, survival meant total isolation. Section 1. The arrival of bad air.
Okay, so the origin story of how this outbreak reached Europe sounds like something straight out of a dark fantasy novel, but it is entirely real. Back in 1346, during the Siege of Kaffa, which is in modern-day Crimea, the Mongol Khan Janibek launched this horrifying early form of biological warfare. As his own troops were dying off from some mysterious illness, he literally ordered their infected corpses to be catapulted right over the city walls. The defending Genoese merchants were absolutely terrified, so they fled on their ships. But they unknowingly brought this silent killer with them, docking in the bustling, completely unprepared ports of the Mediterranean.
Now, keep in mind, people back then had absolutely zero concept of germs or bacteria. To them, the enemy wasn't microscopic, it was olfactory. The leading medical consensus of the day was something called the miasma theory. Basically, they believed that disease was transmitted through corrupted, foul-smelling air. We're talking poisonous vapors rising off human waste, rotting matter, or stagnant water. They honestly believed that literally inhaling this bad urban air was what doomed you.
And honestly, this brings us to the horrific, tragic irony of their survival tactics. To avoid drawing in this bad air, medieval doctors actually told people not to exercise because heavy breathing would pull the poison deep into their lungs. They warned against taking hot baths, thinking warm water would open your pores to the deadly vapors. So what happened? Healthy and sick people alike sealed themselves up inside cramped, stifling bedrooms filled with the stench of unwashed bodies, rotting medical poultices, and filthy straw beds. By trying to hide from the air, they unknowingly created the absolute perfect breeding ground for infected fleas.
Section 2. The body under siege.
Today, modern science tells us exactly what was happening under the skin. The Yersinia pestis bacteria was entering the bloodstream, usually from an infected flea bite. This triggered a horrifying cascade where the body's blood-clotting resources were completely depleted, causing severe internal bleeding that pooled under the skin in these dark black patches. But a medieval patient, they only knew the terrifying ignorance of humoral theory. They just assumed their body's 4 vital humors were wildly out of whack, either from breathing those poisonous vapors, or, as many believed, it was the righteous punishment of a wrathful god. The Islamic physician Ibn al-Khatima actually left us an incredibly detailed, terrifying day-by-day pathology of just how fast this moved. On day 1, a victim might feel severe anxiety and some localized sweating, but weirdly, no fever. Then day 2 hits, and the nightmare really begins. We're talking frightful vomiting, freezing cold hands and feet, and violent spasms. By late that exact same day, the victim's tongue would turn black, they'd get dizzying nausea, and dark ulcers would erupt on the skin. I mean, you went from feeling perfectly fine to knocking on death's door in just 48 hours. So the crucial thing to understand here is that the body was desperately trying to fight back. Its natural expulsive force tried to shove all this perceived poison into the lymph nodes. And this created buboes, these massive, agonizingly swollen glands in the armpits, neck, and groin. Medieval doctors chillingly called these areas the gutters of the body, where corrupt blood painfully pooled. These swellings were so exquisitely, unspeakably painful that they literally drove victims insane.
Section 3. Desperate and terrifying medicine.
Just try to imagine the sheer terror of sitting in a medieval surgeon's chair. Back then, surgery was an absolute last resort, mostly performed by barber surgeons. And remember, germ theory and modern anesthetics were still centuries away. Patients were often held or tied down, putting their faith in crude, super unpredictable mixtures of mandrake, opium, or hemlock just to take the edge off. They felt almost every single cut. Because the standard medicine of the day was completely failing, the treatments got incredibly desperate and bizarre. The super wealthy might chug incredibly costly, super dangerous potions made out of crushed emeralds, mercury, or even arsenic. Others drink cider mixed with spices. You might know it as Four Thieves vinegar. Physicians would heavily bleed their patients, trying to drain out the bad blood. And in perhaps the wildest attempt to draw the poison out, some doctors prescribed rubbing the bare, plucked rumps of live chickens directly onto the buboes, or applying caustic ground blister beetles to the skin. Needless to say, these treatments were totally futile and usually just made the infections way worse. Now for those buboes, doctors like the Italian physician Gentile da Foligno prescribed this truly agonizing three-step surgery. Step 1, apply a massive heated cupping glass directly onto that extremely sensitive tumor. Step 2, slice the bubo wide open with an iron knife. And finally, step 3, cauterize that raw, open wound with incendiary medicines like arsenic or mustard to literally burn the poison out. The pain of this was so unbearable that the doctors, who were risking their own lives just being in the room, started prescribing early sedatives late in the day just to get through it. To really put you in the shoes of someone suffering through this, listen to this horrifying account passed along to Ibn al-Khatima from a Christian merchant in Majorca. There was a man who developed a massive abscess on the base of his thigh. Driven completely out of his mind by the relentless throbbing pain and maybe unable to even find a doctor, he grabbed a knife and tried to lance the bubo himself. In his frantic, absolute agony, he missed the mark. He severed his own femoral artery and bled to death almost instantly. That is the sheer level of physical extremity these people were dealing with.
Section 4. The collapse of society.
So as you can imagine, this unbearable tension quickly boiled over into absolute societal paranoia. To enforce quarantines, cities started employing searchers. These were local women paid to patrol the streets. Following that whole miasma theory, they would identify the sick simply by smelling a person's breath to check for sour or stinking odor. A simple visit from one of these women could mean your house was marked with a red cross, the door padlocked from the outside, and your entire family trapped inside to die. Under this kind of apocalyptic pressure, society completely polarized. Boccaccio noted that some people formed strict, isolated ascetic communities. They locked themselves away, ate only modest foods, and prayed. But others, they completely abandoned all human and divine laws. Realizing that death was probably coming for them anyway, they just became entirely reckless. People abandoned their homes, hopped from tavern to tavern, and just drank and rioted in the streets. Basically, society was crumbling under the weight of its own mortality. But who was actually dying? Well, today, we don't just have to rely on written accounts. We have hard, concrete demographic data. Bioarchaeologists have been studying 14th century mass grave sites, like the ones at Hereford Cathedral and in London, looking really closely at the skeletons of plague victims. By analyzing these bones, researchers can see exactly how the age-at-death distributions drastically shifted when the plague hit town. And here is the really fascinating scientific reality. The plague did not kill indiscriminately. It's a huge myth that it struck the rich and poor equally. When we look at the skeletons in these mass graves, they are highly overrepresented with a condition called linear enamel hypoplasia, or LEH. This is a dental marker that forms when a person experiences severe childhood stress, usually from malnutrition or previous infections. What this means is that the plague was actively hunting down the poor, the frail, and those whose immune systems were already ravaged by childhood trauma.
Section 5. A world forever changed. Because the plague so aggressively culled the frailest, most malnourished members of the population, survival data shows this massive, totally paradoxical shift afterward. For the people who actually managed to survive the nightmare, post-plague life expectancy visibly went up. The society that remained in the ashes was, biologically speaking, significantly healthier and longer living.
And the macroeconomic shifts, just as seismic. England alone lost 30 to 40% of its total population in just a matter of years. Suddenly, there's a massive labor shortage. Governments, like with the 1349 Ordinance of Laborers, desperately tried to freeze wages to keep peasants in their place. But it totally failed. Surviving workers suddenly had unprecedented bargaining power, which effectively started the collapse of the strict feudal system. On top of that, the sheer, undeniable failure of humoral theory forced the medical world to wake up. Medicine started a slow, painful evolution away from ancient superstitions, moving toward active, empirical observation and real treatments.
The Black Death was a true crucible for human civilization. It forced a broken, devastated world to completely reimagine public health, labor, and science purely out of sheer desperation. Which leaves us with a pretty powerful question. As we navigate our own modern global pandemics and crises, dealing with quarantines, economic shifts, and medical breakthroughs, how much of our current response is still haunted by the ghosts of that terrifying, rain-soaked 14th century nightmare?